Hey there everyone, this is Zach here. So unlike the other games in the series, Mario Kart Wii lets you do something pretty cool, which is both drift and trick off a ramp at the same time. It's one of my favorite things to do, not only helping you to reduce airtime but giving you a cool cinematic view. And really, they're just satisfying to pull off. So today, I want to discuss how to do them properly and why they end up being faster very often. Throughout this video, the examples being used will be with flip trick ramps, as that's what this strategy mainly applies with. As the name implies, you get to the edge of a trick ramp, and then just before you get into the air, start a drift, keep holding it, and then trick. When you first hop, it takes 4 frames to get the drift out. To get one, you have to begin holding left or right in that 3-frame interval, starting from the first frame you hop. So as long as you do that, the drift will work. What people will do is hop and turn at the same time to consistently get one out. Alternatively, you can begin holding left or right before initiating the hop. To get the drift out, you just need to be turning no more than 3 frames after the hop is first initiated. It doesn't matter if you start turning beforehand. When it comes to tricking itself, there's a 23 frame window in which you can trick. This lasts from 13 frames before you get into the air up to 10 frames once you do so. As long as you press any trick input during that time, one will come out. So why do people do ramp drifts? Well, it's because if you do them correctly, they end up saving time. For example, let's look here at a custom track called Aquadrum Stage with this ramp here towards the end of the track. The ghost here doesn't do a ramp drift. It goes off normally. The only thing it does is pull upwards on the joystick to reduce airtime, known as pulling down. Meanwhile, the visible run here does a ramp drift. As you can see, once they both get into the air, the ghost is getting more airtime, which isn't a good thing for the most part in Mario Kart Wii. You want to be on the ground. Because of this ramp drift, you'll end up landing sooner on the ground. By the time both runs have had their trick boost wear off, the ghost that only tricked is slower. You can also hop onto a trick panel and drift off it to reduce airtime as opposed to tricking normally, such as what the world record does on Maple Treeway. Ramp drifting ends up saving time because the motion of drifting sends you more downward at the start of being in the air. There are 2 ways people will ramp drift. They'll either hold hard left or right once they start one, or hold diagonally on the joystick. Which method people will use depends on the situation itself. People will go hard left or right if they want to change their position quite a bit, but if they don't want to do that and are mainly focusing on reducing airtime, they'll stick with going diagonally instead. For example, Luke does a diagonal ramp drift on this ramp on Incendia Castle. This is because he doesn't need to adjust his line that much to be close to this edge, but on the following ramp, he drifts hard right because he needs to adjust his line more to avoid the off-road here. Though the harder you drift, the more that the airtime gets reduced. As we can see with this ramp on Bowser's Castle, I am drifting more to the right than the ghost is. As a result, I land on the ground sooner. If you're holding diagonal with the Wii Chuck, GameCube, or Classic controllers, you won't turn as much. However, if you're using the Wii wheel, you're capable of both turning as far to the right or left as possible while moving up or down as far as possible simultaneously. This is because it can hit inputs the other controllers can't. Thus, if you're using the Wii wheel, you can hard drift and pull down in the air to reduce airtime better than the other controllers. You can see this with the input viewer, for example. With the GameCube controller, holding your joystick at a 45-degree angle only lets you reach inputs this far. Meanwhile, with the Wii wheel, it's noticeably a lot further outwards. This also means that you'll have to face the Wii wheel in less of a diagonal direction if you don't want to drift out as far. Ramp drifting is also a good way to recover a bad line. If you're too far over from where you want to be, a hard drifted trick to fix that problem is a good solution a lot of the time. To see if you did a ramp drift or just a hop trick, you can tell the difference by 2 things. 1. You will get these sparks to appear if you did a drift. If you go into the air and they appear, that lets you know you successfully did one. If you don't, then when you turn in the air, you won't see them as soon as you get off a ramp. And 2, the bike leans in a lot more if you drifted. As you can see here, Funky's body is tilting quite a bit to the right. especially noticeable when you look at his arms. His right arm is angled downward while his left one goes upward. If you didn't drift though, then his body barely angles in the direction you turned. It does ever so slightly, but it's very clear to see the difference in how much he's leaning into the right. When you start to drift is also very important. If you start it on the last possible frame where drifting still works, the trick's airtime is further reduced. Let's look at this ramp entering the half pipe on Bowser's castle. Normally, it's slower to trick going off the front of it, and by ramp drifting, you can reduce airtime. However, as shown here, the ghost that didn't trick ended up saving time. That's because the run didn't ramp drift on the last possible frame though. But, once I do so, it's actually faster to trick, as shown here where I'm ahead of the ghost by the time they both reach the boost panels. The main complication though is this additional reduction in airtime is a 1 frame timing. If you start drifting 1 frame sooner, it won't work. If you do this 1 frame too late, you only hop and trick. That being said, even if you fail this 1 frame timing, if you do the ramp drift correctly, it still ends up saving time. Here for example, I failed to drift on the last possible frame. However, compared to not doing any as shown by the ghost, I still land on the ground sooner. This means I save time once their trick boosts have worn off. In addition, be careful to not let go of your drift button too early. When you go off a flip trick ramp, the panel will send you up to 100 km per hour if you're on it for long enough. And then when you get into the air, you gradually lose speed, 0.09 to 0.1 km per hour per frame. Eventually, that panel boost will wear off. However, if you let go of drifting during this time you're in that boost, you will lose additional speed per frame, as shown by the arrow. Eventually, the speed loss will drop down to 0.08 to 0.09 km per hour per frame when the boost is done. But as you can see, I have fallen behind the ghost, who held the drift while the boost was still active. So be careful not to do this by accident. Though, if you notice, letting go of that drift early means you don't turn as much in the air. This can help save you if you're about to fall off the track or hit a wall. It also doesn't matter which trick you do when it comes to reducing airtime. Doing any of the 4 of them will still work. There's one more niche case with ramp drifting I want to discuss in this video, and that's it can be used to take turns better with a trick. For example, with this panel on Incendia Castle, you can be facing yourself to the left, do a ramp drift to the right, and then take the turn ahead very tightly. The reason this is useful is because the turn is so close after the ramp that if you didn't do this, if you tricked, you'd probably be taking a turn super wide, as shown here. In addition, this ramp drift also makes it possible for Spear to take this turn with a trick. Without it, Spear would probably hit this wall. And there we go. That's how to use drift tricking to reduce airtime. It's really easy to do in general, which is why you see so many pro players use them. Though it has some caveats such as that last frame drift that reduces airtime, and it's good for correcting lines as well as making certain turns possible with a trick. If you enjoyed watching this video, please give it a like and subscribe to this channel to get more videos like this about niche strategies in Mario Kart Wii. Thank you so much for watching everyone and have a fantastic day!